A new zero trust mandate from the Office of Management and Budget wants to boost security protections for critical government assets. But there are issues with implementing zero trust. Mark Forman is former eGov administrator at the Office of Management and Budget and the first federal chief information officer. He's currently an executive vice president at Dynamic Integrated Services. Mark, welcome. Nice to have you.
Thank you, Mimi.
So tell me about the SolarWinds attack and what that exposed to us about the current state of the networks.
Well, clearly network-based security had a purpose and it was part of the battle, but it's insufficient to protect the systems and the data.
So there's something called Cyberkill chain, and what does that mean and how is that different from zero trust?
You know, originally the concept was that you had to secure systems, and the systems are applications and databases. And in the original versions of something called GISRA and then FISMA, the concept was, let's fix the vulnerabilities in the systems. That proved pretty hard to do, and over time this concept of a cyber kill chain, that is, you could stop people at the networks and they get to the next level of the network and the next level. And if you could stop them at some point along the way, that would be the cyber kill chain. And what we saw from SolarWinds was that didn't really work because people could figure out how to assume a role and get through those various network controls down to the system. And the system, as long as you had the role, this concept of role-based access controls, or RBAC, you could get into the system. So not fixing those systems vulnerabilities and relying on the cyber kill chain worked for a few years, but ultimately didn't work, as SolarWinds showed us.
So then what does zero trust mean and how is that different?
Well, rather than saying we're going to stop the threats coming through the network by seeing if they fit a role or fit RBAC, or stop them at the system level by this RBAC, role-based access controls, we're now going to understand who's the person, what device are they using, and is this the normal behavior of the person who is actually authorized to use that application. So zero trust is a different approach, and it requires obviously a lot of re-architecting and rethinking how the security controls are put in place.
So OMB says that before anything else, agencies first have to identify what assets they already have. Do they not know what they have?
Oh, this is really important. No. You know, at some level, you know what asset you have. But from the standpoint of government IT management, this is really important to understand what exists within the architecture, and people would say the different layers of the architecture. What are the databases? Who has access to the databases? What are the applications? What devices? What are the networks? All these different pieces in what's essentially over $100 billion annual IT spend. Some people know the piece parts, but from the standpoint of government IT management, cybersecurity has always been the basis for understanding the inventory of IT assets. And this is another round to get up to date and update those asset methods of understanding what's in that federal IT spending.
So let's say you've got everything tracked, then what? How do agencies go about determining, you know, what they need, what they don't need? What do you do after that?
There are a couple things that have to occur. First of all, people are going to have to define their target state architecture. What you find when you look at all the architecture, especially at the end of the fiscal year where we are now, is that you may have a lot more licenses that you need, and another agency may need some of those very licenses. When I was the eGov administrator, we took the opportunity during August and September to reallocate so the government didn't have to overinvest in some agencies and underinvest in others. You rationalize it across the enterprise. And I know the vendors, the licensors didn't really like that, but we got to think about this as you're ultimately supporting the taxpayer. So that's one thing, just basic architecture analysis and optimization of spend. The other thing in figuring out that target state architecture is what will have to change to put in place zero trust. And this is a huge, very time-consuming, as the memo I think refers to. This is going to take a number of years. All these legacy applications and even applications built today don't really have good security built into them. It's just not the way developers think.
Well, Mark, we also have to pay for it, because I'm assuming this is not that cheap to do. So do agencies have the funding available to implement the OMB guidance?
No. They're going to have to look at and get some guidance from OMB on where to set the priorities. And I think this raises the other key point here. Cybersecurity has never been successful in any agency where the executive, the secretary, the administrator is not directly behind securing those systems. You know, a cybersecurity leader understands this. But if you're a political head of an agency, you've so much on your plate. OMB and the White House needs to hold the political appointees accountable in the agencies for making this the correct priority. It's a risk-based decision, clearly, but the political leader has to understand the risk trade-off, and that's really hard for a lot of political appointees.
All right, well, Mark, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.